Heyo, welcome back. This is, I don't know, I think it's like episode 3 from Questions from Friends. So, today's question is actually from my wifey. She asked, why do people who make good income remain poor? I heard this question and I thought to myself, oh, this is actually there's a lot to unpack here. Okay, so let me start from the beginning. Okay, what first of all, what qualifies as good income, right? I think this differs from people to people, and also from depending on your location or the industry that you're in, right? Personally, I started my career making 30 grand a year. I was okay with that. Was that a good income? I'd call it a basic income. Not good, just, covers my expenses. But at the time, for a fresh grad, who I was a terrible college student, by the way. So for somebody like me, I was totally fine with that. Okay, so not bad. I think if it's not bad, then it's good. That's my definition, right? But you could stretch that all the way to, look, I just left a corporate job in Silicon Valley, okay? People in that sphere, I feel like even fresh grads are making like more than 100, like 120, something like that. It's kind of crazy in the Bay Area. Those of you who live there, you don't need me to tell you that, right? So then, what should we use as a standard to consider as good? I'd say it's somewhere in the middle, right? The median income in the United States for a household is only $60,000. Last time I saw data, which was I think like 2018, so maybe it's a little bit higher. Let's call it like 63. And I don't know if you guys have ever Googled like what is the amount of money that one makes before you stop enjoying additional significant increases in happiness. That number has been quoted as about 75,000. So I would say 75,000 would be a good income. And I'll give you a little bit of a variable in terms of housing spend, because that's usually what differs a lot depending on geographical locations, right? Like if you live in New York or the Bay Area, your housing cost is just like double or triple what anybody else in the middle of the country is experiencing. So I'll give you 75,000 plus minus a G or two per month on the housing front, depending on whether you're single or you have a family that you need to account for. Okay, so that's the first part of the question. Why do people with a good income remain poor? Okay, now here's the second part of the question that I find interesting, right? Because it's my wifey who asked this question. Everybody she knows makes at least decent money. Okay, she was a consultant and now she works in tech, so pretty much everyone she knows most likely makes low six figures at the very least, right? So I don't think when she says poor she means actually poor, right? Like poverty level poor. I think she means like asset poor, right? I think she means like since she's met me especially, this question is tainted by why aren't there more people who could retire early like you did? I think that's really what she means, right? But we'll call the definition of poor simply as like you still depend on your job for your expenses, right? So really like the more common term for this would be, people living paycheck to paycheck, right? Which plenty of people making six figures still live paycheck to paycheck, right? In fact, if you read some of the personal finance blogs that I really enjoy reading, like Financial Samurai, for instance, on the internet, you can just Google Financial Samurai. He's got a whole bunch of articles talking about people living on the coast, New York, Bay Area, that claim to be, just middle class, making like $300,000 a year. Let me be clear. I think that's absurd. That's absolutely absurd. Okay, most people can do really, really, really well making 100 grand. Okay, if you make 100 grand, that's basically my 75K as good, plus the 25K to adjust for, you having a job on one of the coastal bubble cities where the cost of living is relatively higher, right? I think if you make $100,000 and you are unable to make yourself happy, then really what you're experiencing is exactly why people who make good money remain poor, which is hedonistic adaptation, right? Or commonly known as lifestyle, inflation. That's really it. Okay, this is the worst quality that keeps everyone kind of just on the grind forever and ever until you die, or the companies that you work for kick you out. Instead of using the money that you earn from your job, anything over $75,000, to be honest, instead of using that money to buy assets that will pay you when you don't have to do an ounce of quote unquote real work. Some people might say, well, that sounds kind of lazy and against the American way. I would say you're absolutely incorrect. Okay, so what is the American way? The American way is capitalism. Okay, having assets is you being a real, actual capitalist. Okay, if you're a freelancer, you're exchanging your time for money, or if you're a regular employee, right? You get most of your income through working for somebody else. You're just a cog in the machine, okay? You're not actually using capital, which is the means of production, right? The whole point of capitalism is, you want to be the owners of the means of production, right? You can either own a factory or a farm or real estate for rent, or via equities, stocks. What you're doing is you're part owner, right? That's what you should be aiming for. So if you're not buying assets like that, but instead you're really buying into the I call it the celebrities American dream, right? If you're buying into MTV's Cribs version of what your life should look like, then here's what I'm going to say, right? It doesn't matter how much money you make. You will never, ever, ever get out of the grind. Never, okay? Because the reason is, well, we human beings, we get used to any kind of increases of material goods relatively quickly, okay? And then it's much easier to edge your way up on the lifestyle inflation and hedonistic adaptation ladder than to ever go down, right? Like, a simple example is things like cable, right? Like when you get a cable package, all of a sudden you go from a local 5 channels to like 150 channels. Sounds great, doesn't it? A year later, I guarantee you won't think 150 channels is all that big of a deal. Because you're used to it. You're like, there's still nothing on. Even though there's plenty on, it's just that you only have, so many free hours of free time. And having 150 channels, an abundance or overabundance of choice, doesn't actually help you to choose or identify what's actually worth your time, right? The same thing with any other items that you can inflate, right? Like, there's no end to it. There's absolutely no end. Now, I just said I used to work in the Bay Area, right? Low 6 figures, really easy. Mid 6 figures, I'm sure most of my coworkers or former coworkers are approaching that. And probably low 7 figures, I'm sure I've worked with people who has made that amount of money per year, okay? And yet, they're still working, most likely in middle management at big companies like the one that I used to work for. But I don't think their net worth reflects that, okay? What do they spend their money on when you think about it? If somebody makes low 7 figures, let me tell you what. Complete bullshit, like heated garage floors. I crack up every time I just think about it. Like, did you know that your car's feet or their tires, they might be cold? Did you know that? That you need to heat your garage floors? In California, the amount of stupidity that goes into a purchasing decision like that is, I don't know, it's just mind-blowing to me, okay? You know why that guy got heated garage floors? Probably because he heard someone else some of his fancy neighbors in the multi-million-dollar houses. He probably heard that those people had the same thing, so he had to go get it. Okay, that's lifestyle inflation. Okay, there's zero end to it. Not for a guy who makes low seven figures, and not for rappers who make tens or hundreds of millions. Okay, not for Johnny Depp, who has 60 properties around the world, just draining his asset every freaking year. That's how celebrities grow broke, okay? They think they have money because they're like, well, I made a lot of money. Sure, but you've invested into nothing that makes you money. Instead, you have a bunch of empty properties around the world that drains your checking and savings account every single day. And then you're surprised that you don't have money anymore. And then you start having to do, stupid direct-to-video releases. That's Johnny Depp right now, right? That guy's famous and rich, supposedly, but now he has to sue his management company because, his decision making is just as dumb as the rest of us, right? Who just makes regular amounts of money. That is why people who make good or even sometimes great income remain asset poor, right? Because they're not educated about how to use money. So there's no end to the game, okay? And that's sad. I want to change that for the entirety of the United States, right? Can't speak for the world because the world's a big place and some parts of it is really, really, really actually poor. That's not where I live, though, right? Most of the first world, the United States, Canada, most of Europe, none of you have to be in this trap, right? Like, if you find yourself in the trap of lifestyle inflation, just realize it's a trap and you can get out of it, okay? Just by using your willpower, okay? There's no need for anyone else to sell you a course or to explain to you stuff. I can tell you that right now. You can get out of it yourself, and you'll be thankful to your future self for that if you do get out of it. All right. Have a good night.